Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the NRG series in Elmhurst, Illinois. I'm Mason Clark, joined by Corbin Hostler, and we are in the top 8 of our Modern 10K Showdown, our last paper event of 2025 that's open before our Invitational, Corbin. It's pretty exciting. How have the last 3 rounds been? We had Will tag in for coming in for the finals.
Yeah, welcome back, Mason. You've missed some good magic. I have to say, we had no duds, which is nice. No player hits their second land. We don't have a game. What we had was some pretty interactive back and forth magic, especially considering what some of these modern decks look like. And on that note, we have a top 8 bracket reveal for you. There we go. Let's start at the top. Ethan Dunn playing Boros Energy. Nathaniel Perigo, one of 2 players on Simic Ritual. Moving on down, August Pearson, Justin Brickman going to be playing that Jeskai Blink Mirror in the quarterfinals. Those 2 players representing that archetype. Wesley
I think
Hickman,
Blink's going to win that one,
Yeah, I think so. Wesley Hickman on Amulet Titan. We watched Wesley pick up a couple really strong Amulet Titan wins, including a match where he got basically Stone Rain twice and still pulled it off. That was pretty impressive. He's going to be taking on Yanan Wan on that Is It Prowess deck. Final one, you watched Joseph Geards in the last round win with Simic Ritual. We'll be taking on Ty Tajali in the quarterfinals with Boros Energy. So there you go. We've got a decent selection of modern decks here in this top 8. And all of these players, of course, will be taking home some points on the 2025 leaderboard, Mason.
They really are. As we pull that up real quickly here, and you can see some of these names that you've seen all weekend here with the at-large bid. Final points aren't in yet. This is our last paper event of the weekend, but not our last event, as next week we are doing the online Edge Eternity Sealed event with Magic Online. You can still sign up for that. There are slots available at this moment, but those points are going to matter as well. This yearly leaderboard, though, really tight race. I mean, look at, so Will Bouchick's got a nice little 8-point bumper above everybody else. Obviously, that's not a hard lock, but look at this. 5th, 6th, and 7th are all within 4 points of each other. And if you're willing to go to 5 points, you have Fletcher right below it all. And so incredibly tight race this year. It's been really awesome to see this. And, from both new and old names, we look at our seasonal leaderboard for season 2 of the NRG series here. You're going to see players like, Ryan Hayes, Garrick, Alfred Will, who's on the yearly one, pardon about that. These players have been doing great for a long time, continue to do really good here. And we'll have to see how today's points are going to matter into it along with the Edge of Eternity, as it looks like our players are finishing looking over deck lists in the future match area.
Yeah, those leaderboards are going to change a decent amount here because a number of those players in that sort of 5 to 10 range that you mentioned were all playing deep into the tournament today. And in fact, some of them are still playing in the tournament today. So we're definitely going to see some movement in those leaderboards. And it's all going to start right here. Quarterfinals on your left, Ethan Dunn, Boros Energy, our number 1 seed, by the way, taking on Nathaniel Perigo on Simic Ritual, one of the cooler decks we've seen today. And not, Boros Energy holding down the fort is sort of the deck, the format's fairest deck, so to speak. And definitely going to get a boost from being on the play here.
Yeah, being on the play is always nice when you're a deck that likes to curve out, especially here. The Simic Ritual deck has a lot of things that can get in the way of your Ragavans and things like that, but being on the draw, there's no real turn 1 plays in this deck outside Dismember, so it can be a little awkward. But Subtlety is technically a turn 1 play. I'll give you that.
I guess so. If you just want to slow down any kind of board pressure, you can take the Ocelot Pride out of the equation.
Corbin, I've played this deck a few times. I once had to evoke a Subtlety to then flare it to make sure the problem went away forever, and that was a heartbreaking moment. I'm hoping to see that here in the top 8.
That is a lot of cards.
Yeah.
But it's a nice line, Mason.
It's a nice line, and you know what? Sometimes you got to pay the ultimate price, and that's what this ritual deck does. It generates a lot of value in 2-for-1s itself, but fights over key cards and just kind of makes the games go long.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the ones we watched Joseph play earlier essentially came down to, after a huge flurry of counterspells from both players, came down to the fact that his Shardless agents just all came with an additional card attached, even when that card was not particularly powerful in itself.
Now, Voice of Victory serves a really frustrating thing here. Nathaniel has a lot of like subtlety, flair, force negation, all these sort of cards. Has some flash creatures too that you want to sometimes trick your opponent, and not being able to play on your opponent's turn is going to make that a much harder plan. And you see Nathaniel there kind of tank a bunch and then just decides to play Birthing Ritual because we know we need to find some of our cards that can actually answer this, and we need to take over the board state.
Yeah, I think usually you want to lead with your 2-drop creature over your ritual, but in this case, just go ahead and resolve it. Just accept that you're going to be taking some damage from the voice. Playing on your opponent's turn for now is locked off to you, but just getting generic value out of your own cards, that you can do, can Nathaniel. And sometimes those value 2-drops, when you have Birthing Ritual out, turn into an important Oculus. So the upside of getting this off is very high here. And looks like we're going to go with a very deep line here from Ethan, going to use the bombardment on his own turn, be able to transform the Johnny.
Yeah, and Galvanic Discharging and flipping and having this Voice of Victory, it's so much damage. And this is one of the struggles that I think this ritual deck can have, which is when you get something underneath you, it can be a little hard to get it off the board. Especially, that's a nice token of the cat with the fist. Especially the, like ones that are like planeswalkers, right? Like you can attack them down, but we don't have a lot of really strong creatures. We've got a lot of, homies with upside,
That's exactly right. Yeah, and we watched Ethan earlier, in fact, play for the top seed and earn it. And that obviously is huge here because being just one turn ahead, as it always is a big deal in Magic, but is particularly in this matchup.
Yeah.
But all right, Nathaniel got 3 mana here, a couple snow lands in case you do hit that Ice Fang somewhere along the line here. We're going to go with a Shardless, so this is a big Cascade, and that's not a bad hit. Oh, okay, well.
Yeah, this is nice. You get your Coiling Oracle, you make your little land drop, and now you hope to turn this into an important Oculus. And if you do that, you're in a pretty great spot. I did see another Coiling Oracle. I believe you can grab equal on Birthing Ritual, so you get a little redraw action. Worst comes to worst.
Yeah, and it's great. Obviously, the ritual is because you get to look and then make your choice. So, yes, X or less. So it's actually just anything you want in that case, although in this case, your deck's full of 2s and 3s. So we're just going to cycle Oracle into Oracle and just continue to accumulate value. And in fact, you can even, I was going to say, if you hit another land here, all of a sudden you have more mana open. We're in the end step. So since you can't cast spells on your opponent's turn, you do still have priority, does Nathaniel, in the end step here to crack the Dismember with the extra mana the previous Oracle got him.
Yeah, and I think this play makes a lot of sense, even though it's and it looks like we had to get the breeding pool maybe because of the fetch. We weren't able to grab like Island
so
here.
Much damage, but
yeah, but you're gonna take that damage with the Voice of Victory of Johnny, anyways. Yeah. And now you have unlocked like Flare of Denial. So now maybe if Ethan goes for some big 3 mana play like a Seasoned Pyro, Fable, Flage, you can answer that and then just have to fight through the Ajani. So this could be a pivotal hit here. There's that Seasoned Pyro.
Yeah, that was basically everything Coiling Oracle ever wanted to do. This is so much value out of Coiling Oracles. Got the land drop, use the land drop to cast the spell. The second one got you. Now use this one to turn into a Flare of Denial. And all of a sudden, Nathaniel down to 5 life, but starting to see a line here.
Yeah, and there's no red permanent. So, you're making 2/1 cats. That's good against 2/2s, but it's not an unbeatable position.
Not at all. And you're not at 3 life either as Nathaniel, so you're not just dead to any Flage triggers. All right, here we go. Shardless number 2. Into Fibblethip. Now, as we learned earlier, this comes from Exile, so you do not get 2 cards off of Fibblethip, but you do get 1 card, and you do get an additional blocker.
Watcher for Tomorrow truthers are everywhere. There's dozens of us.
Watcher for Tomorrow, the card that has Hideaway?
Yeah. Hideaway 4, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2/1/2. Fibblethip could never.
Yeah, to your point, this Simic Ritual deck may not be in its final form.
I'm just a Fibblethip hater, I'm a loot man. What can I say? as this Oculus, I mean, this is kind of a huge turn, right? If Ethan doesn't have something that can like really stabilize or,
Yes.
like take over the game, we're firmly in Nathaniel's court as long as we don't draw running burn spells.
Yeah, and Oscillate Pride, I don't think is that, but what's the follow-up? Maybe it is Flage, okay.
So 8 permanents right here. We're not going to hit City's Blessing. This is a moment where you shoot the Manifest Dread. There's no way it can transform. Shardless
Yeah.
Agent is a 2/2 that is for Flare Denial. That's like the one upside to it at the moment.
As we saw earlier, I think there were 3 Manifest Dreads that turned into Oculuses in combat.
Oof.
It
Okay.
was something for sure. And so you're right. You get it out of here if you can.
Yeah, I think so. Ethan targeted a Porn Oculus. That means it can't chump block or just can't eat the 2/1 cat token. On the other hand, Shardless Agent can now. Yeah, so maybe a small accidental misstep there from Ethan. I really appreciate the fact that it's sort of no sunk cost fallacy.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, I made a mistake, whatever. I'm not going to just throw away this guy and hope you block with your 5/5, excuse me, that you would never block with. So good job stabilizing there. Just say stabilizing the mental. Oh, did it go? Okay, it looked okay.
Face
So the
makes a
life
lot
total,
more sense, to be
yeah,
honest.
the finger pointing, I guess, was towards Nathaniel, but it looked to me like it was the Oculus. That's on me. My bad, chat.
Yeah, I think going face at least gives him the option here. I can't quite count how many are in the graveyard, but I can now, and that's enough to escape it. So this actually does put the game, of course, pending what that last card is in Nathaniel's hand, and now we'll have maybe another one in his hand. It does give Ethan a line to finish this off.
Yeah, and that Flare Denial, that will be able to, actually just counter. Obviously, you need your opponent to go for that for it to be a line, but my mistake there, the chat. What
And Nathaniel still got some work to do, though, right? Even with the accumulated value, like it being down to 2 life, things get a little hairy. Although this is not bad. In fact, that's quite good. Is that Harbinger of the Seas?
Yeah, Harbinger of the Seas turning face up there, turning off the ability to even play the Flage is massive. Even though we had the Flare able to counter it, this is just a little bit better.
Well, in this, it's almost to just consider it a lock piece. So this is what we had Joseph on. Geared's playing this in the other side of the bracket for an interview earlier, and he said just sometimes you just flip that Harbinger of the Seas, and the game ends because your opponent maybe doesn't realize that once you resolve the birthing ritual trigger, the card is just in play, and now all of your lands are islands. And if you don't have the mana, you don't have the mana. And in this case, it just completely locks Ethan out of red mana. And now we know that there is plenty of backup in Nathaniel's hand. So all Nathaniel has to do is figure out how not to take 2 stray points of damage from those tokens populating Ethan's side. Yeah, there we go. We'll just turn our ground 1/1 into a flying death touch 1/1 and keep drawing cards. Once the ritual is in play, the deck basically seems impossible to interact with in fair means, which is what we've watched play out, whether it was Jeskai Blink or Boros Energy. You just can't keep up. You either answer the ritual or you will get buried by the creatures, as we see there.
Yeah, great play there from Nathaniel. Stabilize the board, like you said. And, it's tricky. I talked about it before, like the start of the match. This deck has an issue with cards like a Johnny thing on the board if you can't get your Oculus going. And you can kind of see how that Johnny did sort of start to, get the snowball going. We were able to catch up. But those are the things that Nathaniel's going to be looking at over here when it comes time to sideboard.
All right, taking a look at the sideboard here of the Boros Energy deck. You know what you're up against. You know what you need to deal with. What do we have to deal with it? Now, Wrath of the Skies seems like an important one. We do spot those wear tears. That gives you an answer to the ritual.
Yeah, Wrath of the Skies. I mean, just that deck's all 3 drops basically, right? So 3 or lower, I should say. So that's gonna be a really appealing one. Even though you're obviously a deck that plays the board too, if you hit like that a Johnny moment, that can be
Mhm.
really good, or just stabilize. Use that, then get a Flage, or sometimes the games get a hand. You want to have something like that. I also think Showdown the Scald is a surprisingly nice card. If the board is going to get stalled up, this is a good card to kind of break that stall. And if you're ahead, it's a good way to commit to the board without really committing to the board. So kind of like those cards, but I'm not expecting a ton here from Ethan in the sideboard. I think players are starting to just now really respect the Simic Ritual deck. I think there was a lot of like, oh, that's cute. You know what I mean? For the last couple
Exactly.
of weeks, but it can't keep being cute and keep doing well. And I also think if you do think it is just a deck that's cute, you know what I mean? And it keeps winning, then it's probably a sign you should play it, right? You're probably a strong player. Go deck that keeps winning, even if you think it's not good. Give it a chance, see what you can learn from it. But yeah, I'm not expecting a ton here from this sideboard. I wouldn't be shocked by a couple cards, like you mentioned, like if a Wear Tear did come in, wouldn't surprise me, right? Blowing up the Birthing Ritual makes a good amount of sense. The Shardless Agent is an artifact, so you might even get a little Wombo combo there of a 2-for-1. So totally reasonable outcome on that end here. But I really appreciate always a smaller sideboarding philosophy. So curious to see how Ethan wants to do it. Meanwhile, for Nathaniel, this is a really interesting sideboard when it comes to this deck. These players, once again, people are still figuring stuff out. We have 3 Stern Scoldings. That counters a ton of things from the Boros Energy deck. You also have Endurance, which is a great way to fight over Flage. Also, just a good body. In this matchup, 3-4 outsizes most things in combat without, a Guide of Souls getting involved. And, you could also bring in this Harbinger of the Seas. We saw how annoying it was last game. Also, might want to cut those sort of cards, right? Lots of little mini games your opponent needs to play around. So I'm really interested to see how they want to sideboard here and play this game.
Yeah, this is going to be a fascinating one, I have to say, because this ritual deck has a lot of lines, and it's really hard to tell if you're trying to go. Sometimes if you're trying to go under it or over top of it, because you just don't know sort of whether it's playing 1/1s for a couple turns or whether it's just going to suddenly upgrade into 5/5s that bring along additional bodies. And at the same time, all of a sudden you have to worry about the interaction, even the endurances. So just a lot sort of going on beneath the hood. As you said, the mini games and many parts of these decks playing into each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this deck, too, for people at home watching this for your first time seeing it, it's a very interesting deck. You have a ton of quote unquote free spells. So against, decks that are weak to like your subtleties, your flayers, your force negations, you're really, really good. And Abhorrent Oculus does just sort of take over games when you're playing fair, grindy Magic, especially when backed up with counter spells.
Mm-hmm.
So this deck, I think, is really powerful. And blue and green, it has enough sort of sideboard options, I think, to cover a lot of modern. And it's not of their own possibilities that maybe we even see a light splash in this deck in the future. I've seen some players splash Omnath
Mm-hmm.
in this sort of shell. A little rich for my blood, but I think that's proof that there's a little bit of room for innovation too as time moves on. Not even just in the Simic versions of this deck, but Band, Sultai, etc. as time goes on. So I'm really excited to see the evolution of this deck, as I think it's very, very cool.
Yeah, the 2 drops all give you value when they come into play. But I really think sort of the innovation of this list is because we've seen Flare of Denial decks
Mhm.
as a concept since the card was introduced. What the ritual does is that it basically, in a way, gives you Flare of Denial 5 through 8 in the sense that you're able to take the value accumulated off of a sort of a generic 2 drop like Coiling Oracle or Ice Fang Coatl that's pretty good and a nice value play. But when you can turn that into something more powerful later on as a fodder, that's really what makes it work. The fact that you have 8 cards that do that, not just the 4.
Mhm.
But here we go, hopping into this one. Ethan gets to go on the play, and this is what you want. This is where we see Boros Energy at its best many times is Ragavan on the play. Ragavan on the draw when your opponent has a bunch of 1/1s to block with, maybe not quite as strong, but in this case, you have a chance to get things really rolling with the Ragavan.
Stern Scalding the Exile there. Didn't high roll into like a shardless agent for Ethan, or something along that vein that we could have slammed. But getting rid of the Stern Scolding is, just good information if you weren't sure that Nathaniel was going to bring it in. Remember, this event is open deckless for the top 8, so these players do have access to each other's 75s.
And a Johnny on 2 is a pretty decent follow-up here. So Ethan doing his part, applying the pressure.
Yeah, and we see Ethan really valuing the surveil here, right?
Yeah.
Losing the treasure, something that it's not going away. It's like a $20 bill burning a hole in my pocket. But we need to get that surveil, which tells me Ethan's maybe missing something, right? And I doubt it's a land, because if it was a land, we probably would have just kept the treasure. So Nathaniel, very strong player, is going to pick up on that sort of read and see if there's any information they can use for the advantage there, as I am getting tongue-tied here.
Well,
we're all fighting our own demons.
Option here for Nathaniel is many cards in hand. No, we could play a 2-drop, but instead chooses to just pass the turn here. Not going to run out an Oracle or Ice Fang. Certainly raises a question of what the plan is here on Ethan's 3rd turn. You mentioned Ethan really highly valuing the surveil, and well, I don't know how you feel about that. You surveil the land into the graveyard.
Yeah, I have to imagine. I can't quite make out Ethan's hand, but the play tells me there's a lot of lands over there, right? We're not worried about the treasure. We're worried about finding specific things. Oh, my heart. This was one of my favorite plays back in Modern.
Yeah.
In the good old days. Just flash in front of a Ragavan, draw my card, block your Ragavan. What are you going to do? That was $80 for your Ragavan? 5 cents. 5 cents, buddy. Uh-oh.
Guide of Souls is the follow-up for Ethan. I mean, you know what? You just unlocked the 2nd Ragavan. But really, if you're Nathaniel, I mean, that's what you need to do on the draw here. I mean, just kind of settle the board while you can, try to get to a ritual, start accumulating value. If Nathaniel is able to follow up with this, I guess a shardless agent into another Ice Fang, for instance, would give you a decent starting point. But instead, it's a Coiling Oracle. Does hit a land off the top, so
that was big.
I don't know how much that matters if Nathaniel has a 2nd one for the turn. Does not.
Yeah, Nathaniel had no land for turn, and pulling Oracle down and having it hit the land is a huge one, especially because you can maybe fetch, surveil, and get rid of something random, hope to draw another fetch land, and slam something like an Abhorrent Oculus. That's one of the best ways to stabilize this board.
All right, well, Ethan doing his part, just keep sending things sideways. Well, there we go. That's not a bad thing to surveil a Flage right on into the graveyard.
I love Ethan's face. I'm like, yeah, business as usual. Just, Flage in the yard off the old surveil.
All right, so this is prompts a response from Nathaniel. We mentioned all the free spells available to the deck. Here's one we hadn't seen yet, but was quite good there. That's Endurance to just dump the Flage and the rest of the graveyard away. Voice of Victory, follow-up for Ethan. Try to protect actions on his turn. Just really trying to spam the board out here and attack for 1s and 2s, I guess, until Nathaniel goes down, because the Oracle can jump in front of, I guess, the Ragavan, and then you take a hit, but then you still untap. Oh. Definitely a big turn coming up here from Nathaniel. Was able to get to that 3rd land off of the Oracle. We know there's, I believe, a shardless in hand.
And an Oculus.
Yeah, so Static Prison, though, is just going to remove the blocker.
Huh.
Remove any ability to sacrifice. Now comes the attack. Ragavan's going to get in. That means there's energy to jump a creature. So big hit for Ethan here. I'm not sure that Nathaniel has any haymakers to get back in this.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, the best thing before was Abhorrent Oculus, but you're taking so much damage on this turn. And you can never really block the cat token. You're going to get your Oracle back on the next turn currently because there is no energy for the Static Prison. But, it weirdly not eating like 2 damage and trading for Ragavan there and also being in the yard potentially for an Oracle is going to maybe force our hand to bin a card we don't really want to bin. And this whole time I'm trying to think, what is the card that I'm trying to get towards? This deck needs some sort of delve thing that, like something that doesn't trigger our Shardless Agent but is good in these spots. Whatever that is, I don't know.
Tathiger.
Ooh, the Golden Fang.
I think
control for your Oculus.
Nathaniel could play Shardless here, maybe cascade into a ritual, and you can ritual into Oculus, but I'm still not sure that any of that prevents 5 damage from just hitting you in the face on the next turn. Well, I guess maybe get the Oracle back, right? And you can have another blocker.
Yeah, it's awkward. So you can have 3 blockers, right? Because we can play the Oculus, then we get the Oracle back. Now, with all that in mind, the Ajani you can't block the cat token, right? Because if you do, you flip the Ajani and then the Ajani shoots you in the face.
Right.
So that's kind of able. And then that means that, like there's second order effects on all these other cards. So I think Nathaniel is just dead and is just trying to think of, is there anything I could, hit off this Whirling Oracle that could save me? And the answer is no. We're going to move on to game number 3 here.
All right, well, there you go. Ethan able to knot this one up at 1 apiece. So, as it often is, play draw is quite relevant, and Nathaniel does get to go back on the play with the Simic deck for game 3. So let's go ahead, take a look at those sideboards. That means being on the play means you get to play your 2 drops first. It means you get to have a 1/1 by the time Ragavan is ready to connect. So that's really sort of the biggest dividing line between the play draw and how those first couple of turns can play out. Also, we might see some Stern Scoldings. We saw they did come in game 2. Those allow you to sort of do the classic, I spend 1 mana to counter your 2 mana spell snare type play with a little more flexibility. So it's really just all about who can most efficiently spend their mana in the first 2, maybe 3 turns. And that way you actually are able to get to the engine cards if you're Nathaniel to resolve your ritual or your agents and start gaining value. Or, conversely, that's when Ethan starts looking at Flage and Goblin Bombardment.
Yeah. And those are pivotal cards that, being on board first really helps you sort of stabilize against. Not expecting too much to change here. Maybe maybe you're a little bit more interested in Harbinger this season was close because you're on the play, less chance to actually fetch. But, I'm not expecting anything too big here. And I expect a very similar situation from Ethan on the left here with NRG. Just sort of, you can look at the sideboard, can think about it, might fake put a card in, fake take a card out, but I'm not expecting a massive difference here on the play and draw. Like we talked about before, there are some cards that are kind of on the edge you could totally bring in, totally have, but I think, you need to get on board, get going, have a little bit of interaction along the way, the Boros Energy recipe.
Yeah, well said. So that's what Ethan has been able to do pretty well. We talk a lot about how in a world full of, Goblin Charbelchers and Amulet Titans, Boros Energy is still the deck that wants to play 1/1s for 1 and 2/1s for, well, mostly for 1 now, but sometimes for 2. And that's just, it's sort of the last bastion of, I want to attack you in the format until we saw things like, say, Is It Affinity come up, or Is It Prowess has put 1 copy into the top 8 today as well. So now there are sort of multiple decks that try to get under the other decks. And we saw in that game, that's exactly what NRG was able to do. It just went so wide that even though Nathaniel was gaining more value on a per card basis, it just wasn't enough fast enough. And Johnny sort of quietly was a big part of that, just because of the sort of invisible pressure it put on the game because of its ability to transform, obviously, into a planeswalker.
Yep. Yeah, Johnny does a lot for these small games. If the board gets cluttered, Johnny does a good job of making that awkward. I'll tell you what else makes things awkward, though, is this segue into talking about our these sealed GGO event next week, November 9th. You can play and sign up right now.
Well done.
You go to our website or Twitter to get the link for that. $2,500 in prizes. The winner goes to our NRG champs at the end of the year. And if you're one of our people on the leaderboard, it does score leaderboard points. So you might want to get there just your slot. A lot of
I scanned that QR code. I'm not going to lie. I've got it saved in my phone. I'm ready to go.
Let's go.
I used to love my first tournament results were in sealed back many too long years ago. But I love the playing sealed for stakes.
I love to hear it. And we hope more of you'd love to do it next weekend. Meanwhile, next thing bubble came down here from Ethan. I like it. We didn't mention it in sideboarding, but there's a lot of free spells where Nathaniel tries to, cheat a little bit, quote unquote, right? Get ahead. And having this makes a lot of sense. I didn't flag it on first read, but as soon as it hit the board, I was like, oh, I probably should have flagged that on first read.
Yeah, it doesn't. So it doesn't quite hit everything, right? Because the birthing ritual does not cast the card. It simply puts it into play. So while it doesn't stop that, it does stop a whole lot of cards out of the ritual deck, including the cascades that we saw earlier. So it is a pretty solid answer here, and that's why it immediately. Well, actually, I'm not sure if this Bosage is pointing at the bombardment or the bobble. I would assume
it touched the bobble, but as I learned last time, touching or hovering does not necessarily mean it is true.
Not Chaos Orb rules.
Yeah. Oh man, Chaos Orb Boseiju is so powerful there. You can put the cards way too close together. Gotta learn the Chapin move on that one. And it looks like a Surveil land's probably going to come out here. You could hold the Surveil if life's good. Your hand's perfect or whatever. Get whatever you want. I like this players here joking around.
They're in the top 8. It's all a free roll. Well, not a free roll, but it's all additional because there are more prizes to win, including the token. Custom token will be going to the winner here.
Yeah, and in fact, to the end of the year $35,000 PTQ.
Yeah, I have to say, Joseph got put on the spot earlier. What token would you like if you win? And the answer was a Manifest Dread token. So we could see the Mimic Ritual deck with some new hardware in the future.
I just call that thinking about 5 years from now for me. But we're going to pass the turn after a Shardless Agent into an Ice Fang Coatl. Nathaniel, way to go. Way to flip that, sinking a super on its backside. I was about to get a judge on you there, but you fixed it for me. My goat, now I know who I'm rooting for. Biasly, of course.
The player who... All right, so Ethan now... with no creatures in play on turn 3 or turn 4 now, which is unusual to say the least for Boros Energy. So it is a big spot here, and it looks like this spot is what probably makes the most sense. We're going to just cast Flage and go from there because it's not bad. And in fact, with that bombardment out, it could have done work, and that is why it immediately runs into subtlety.
Yeah, I like this play a lot from Nathaniel. It can be really easy at first glance to just be like, yeah, both my creatures are kind of whatever. It's fine. But you need these little bodies to be on board so you can start ritualing, start taking over the game. Yeah, and you see Ethan is forced to take down Shardless Agent. I mean, it's a 2-2 at this point, right? It pitches to the Flare, but that's about all you're doing. And so I really sort of, love Nathaniel's play because if you hadn't, that Galvanic Discharge would still be around, and Ethan values the agent so much. We can't wait for the next turn. We just have to do it now.
Well, yeah, and you have allowing that Flage to take rid of both your creatures means any additional flares you draw are bad. You're able to use the subtlety, and I might have spotted. Well, we'll see. I might have spotted another subtlety in Nathaniel's hand if you could just go even further down this road. Although
the hand is a Riddler, Oculus, and Birthing Ritual.
Oh, that might have been a Riddler then. Even better.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at least.
Oculus, okay. Might have been Oculus I saw. So Oculus is great here. Even this is not the cheating version of Oculus. This is I actually have the cards out of my graveyard for it, and it's just as good.
It's very good. Oh, Stern Scolding, my mistake there. Looked a little like the Riddler. Though the Riddler not in Nathaniel's deck, so probably would need to intervene if that was the case. Although you can pick them up at nrgstore.com for all your Magic the Gathering needs.
Well, Oculus is much better than all of that here because this is the kind of drop that is matchup winning, because now all of a sudden Flage not as good. And in fact, it can get to 4 points with the bombardment, and that's still not good enough.
Yeah, and this is where last turn using the galvanic discharge on the shardless agent, you had reasoning for it, did Ethan, but it actually ended up making us perfectly into the Oculus. Now we have a hard time answering the Oculus. Ethan trying to sort of, get the board under control has accidentally laid it completely out of control.
And I have to say, it's probably not as common to when you're, game playing against everything the ritual deck can do. Them playing Oculus the fairway is usually not that high on the list. That said, Guide of Souls into the Flage for Ethan here. He's going to do everything he can to get back into it. Looks like we might be sending all of it at the Oculus because you just have to answer that card.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's a good play from Ethan. Your Flage, it's good at rebuilding you from these kind of points. Just do not let Nathaniel get this Oculus going. If there's one underneath the Manifest Dread, such as life, you were dead either way. Right. Just answer this and kind of move forward.
And this is why all these little bodies for this Simic deck still kind of matter. So many of its games in just attacking for 2 and 3 points at a time. Okay, another ritual, though.
Yeah, 2 rituals. Oh my gosh, Endurance is such a crazy good find here. Part of why I was just saying that play was so good is because Ethan had the Flage lined up. It's like, yeah, you're losing, your Guide of Souls in order to answer this Oculus, but who cares? Flage will win you the game as it always does, but not when Endurance is found. And this is one of the huge advantages of this Birthing Ritual deck. You see so many cards. When you have so many strong creatures these days, you can really move through your deck.
It's really a Court of Calling type feel where you see so many cards with the ritual. You get to play not necessarily, crazy one-ofs, but like you get to play Endurance and just have it in situations where it's not even the key thing. It's just a thing like that. And it becomes incredibly good in specific spots. And you can get away with it because you got to look at the top 14 cards of your deck. That said, if you're Ethan, you try to dig back in here, and Flage, well, it clears the board. You hope Nathaniel doesn't have any more creatures to feed into the Birthing Ritual pile here, but that's not the case because that's a Coin Oracle that draws an Abhorrent Oculus, and now we're going to get a couple more triggers. Might end in another Oculus.
Yeah, it looks like we're counting cards in Graveyard and also seeing what we've gone through.
Yeah,
I think we're not. Sorry, go.
So the way it works, right, is there's 2 Birthing Ritual triggers, and you have to make the choice. So he's choosing whether he wants to sacrifice to the first one before resolving the second one, if I understand correctly.
Correct. Yeah. So I think what's also happening is because Birthing Ritual moves through so many cards, Nathaniel knows the bottom 12. Well, roughly knows the bottom 12 cards of the deck, and we're moving another 12 cards. So you're getting toward. I think Nathaniel's like, okay, there's a card I want in the bottom, either top 6 or bottom 6 of the 12.
Right.
And how close am I to that when I move 7 cards deeper now? It's one of the weird things with the Birthing Ritual deck is you kind of know where things are and you can play towards them.
And here we go. He's able to dig with the second trigger to an Abhorrent Oculus, which hits the battlefield. And I mean, Ethan has got 2 cards in hand. We have not yet seen an answer to it, but I suppose a Galvanic Blast would get you there.
Yeah, Galvanic Discharge.
Discharge, yeah.
No worries. Could be good. We have a Subtlety and a Stern Scolding in hand, so creatures are going to be not what the doctor ordered. And yeah, I mean, we move through so many cards, right? Because it's just sort of crazy how close we actually are back towards that first pile of cards we saw.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, here we go. The follow-up is in a Johnny, which is going to run into the Stern Scolding. It would have been a decent attempt to get back into it, but instead it just is sent to the graveyard. The Abhorrent Oculus remains in play. Things slipping away for Ethan here. Meanwhile, Nathaniel on Simic Ritual looking to be one of 2 players perhaps to advance with this deck.
Yeah. Far from decking are we right now, but there's so much knowledge about where everything was prior to the shuffle. Might also be that shuffle is indicative of, one of our cards that we really want is in the bottom, 6 or 12 of our deck. And if you shuffle up and it's a creature you want to find, you're going to get a lot of looks at it.
Yeah, if you're able to find Harbinger here, right, you could cut off red mana from Ethan.
Manifesting Dread again.
Okay, well, just knocks Ethan down to 12 life. Has 9 power in play, does Nathaniel. So just an Ocelot Pride from Ethan. And just run into yet another Stern Scolding. So Seasoned Pyromancer is the last attempt. That hits a Subtlety as Nathaniel's last card. And that was pretty academic right there. Nathaniel knows they have it in. They do. Ethan extends the hand. Nathaniel Perigo advancing to the semifinals here in Elmhurst at the NRG Championship Series. That was a pretty awesome display of that deck's power, Mason.
Yeah, it was really good and really well played there from Nathaniel. You even saw a little bit of a sigh, like, "Oof, we got out of there. We did it. We got it all to come together," and really showing off how strong this deck is. And we'll probably assuredly be seeing more of it as our semifinals. We only have 2 matches to cover. One of them is probably going to be Nathaniel. We are going to take a break and set up for our semifinal matches. I believe that most of the other quarterfinals are done, but we'll be back very soon with more Magic. See you soon.